Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, COVID-19 Boost Your COVID-19 Tech Toolbox. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the webinar using your computer's speaker system by default. Due to the high capacity of this webinar's event, computer audio will be used in today's session rather than a phone dial-in option. You will have an opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing them into the questions pane in your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time, and we will address them during the Q&A session. I would now like to introduce Bethany Miller, Vice President of Regional Economic Development at Greater Houston Partnership and member of the IEDC Board of Directors. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you, and welcome all of you to the fourth webinar in the International Economic Development Council series on how economic developers and their communities are addressing the COVID-19 crisis. For the foreseeable future, IEDC will be hosting these free webinars on Monday afternoons with the intent to share resources, tools, best practices, and the latest updates. Today, we're honored to welcome a group of IEDC's top technology experts to share their tools and experience with us. Our speakers are Sean McGuire, AICP and CXT, the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the town of Colony, New York; Allison Larson, CFD, founder and empowerment superhero with Padzo LLC; Leif Wardy, CFD, and President of Executive Pulse, Inc.; Calandra Cruikshank, President and CEO of Statebook International; Ron Bertassi, Chief Executive Officer, GIS WebTech; and Chris Briggs, Senior Vice President and GM, Public Sector Solutions. Now we'll get started with Sean's presentation. He's going to share how he used his experience in online learning from working as an adjunct professor at the University of Albany to create an engaging and interactive public meeting.
Thank you, Bethany. It's really great to be here with everybody today. Well, as Bethany mentioned, I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development here for a town in, outside of Albany, New York, but I'm also the founder of SM Strategies, which is a firm committed to providing disaster relief for planning and economic development. And I did that really because I felt that there was a real opportunity to help people out there more than anything else. So when the day job is done, I spend a lot of time also focusing on how to provide help and resources. Just need to get control of the slides. All right, thank you. So in talking about this, I think there's four main questions I'd like to address. One is, well, why should we continue our work in this emergency? Why should we continue to have our boards meet while we're facing such a momentous challenge? The second is, how does student engagement translate into public engagement? That's really what's influenced some of the decisions I've made here to put our program together in New York. The third is, what tools are available, accessible, and affordable? And finally, the last one is, what are some key considerations in implementing that solution? So again, why should we continue our work in this emergency? And one of the first things that happened here in New York were some immediate shutdowns and reductions in the workforce on the actual work site. And so, that's one of the things that we considered first was the absolute safety. And if we couldn't meet safely in person, we had to put together a different approach and a different strategy to meet virtually and remotely. That was important because we needed to prevent further economic disruption. Certainly, consumption and production is a cycle, and in this current pandemic, the impacts to consumption are significant. And as a result, the economic cycle that we rely on in our communities is greatly disrupted. So local governments can either limit disruption or cause the wheels of the economy to grind to a halt in its actions. By continuing routine public business, we can make that essential and find a way to accomplish it. We can provide normalcy to the community. Our community looks to our leaders to provide directions, and words and actions matter. If a city council stops meeting, what message does that send to the community? By stopping routine meetings for more than just a reset, it sends a message that we're unprepared and puts public confidence in our leadership at risk. And finally, preserving staff morale. I'm like many of you work as part of a team, and we've become rather forcefully disconnected from those people. I know that this experience has been really draining on my team, and keeping people from working gives them a sense that we're in this together and we need each other. It also reminds them that they're valuable and necessary. As Ben Finney mentioned, I'm an adjunct professor here at the University at Albany. And one of the things that I'm very much committed to and focused on is keeping my students engaged. And so I use those same lessons and information and experiences to translate into public engagement. The first thing is that engagement cannot be forced. If you think back to any experience that you've had in a classroom where an instructor has forced you to be engaged, and perhaps at the threat of being voluntold, that type of engagement is really weak at best. Public engagement will be quite similar. It needs to be easing and compelling. And the compelling component can be found in the work that we're doing. Now for the easy part. That's removing barriers to engagement. In designing engagement, there are a lot of resources out there, and there's some really great ones. But if they're not easily accessible and easy to use, you'll only connect with a very small audience. And I'll say that in designing my community's approach to public meetings and engagement, this was the first and most important element that we considered. Our solution had to be accessible and easy to use. Know your audience. That doesn't mean you can't integrate other tools with your engagement. Simply know your audience. And in my case, we always set aside the first few minutes in any meeting to allow the public into the room and go over how the meeting will run and any tools that will be used. We want to make sure that the public has great confidence in the resource that we're doing and how we're conducting these meetings. Last piece is remaining genuine. One of the great things about these solutions out there is that you're on camera and visible, unlike a typical conference call. But if you think that you can let your approach and attitude slide, I wouldn't count on it. So certainly remain genuine to the entire process. So I want to go over a couple of ideas, accessible and affordable tools that were out there that we looked at and we had evaluated as part of our process. There's a lot of them out there, and I'm really just going to touch on some of the big ones out there. The first one is Google Meets. Google Meets allows users to connect up to 100 people at one time at their basic level and up to 250 participants at the business and enterprise levels. And recently, Google has actually opened up the limits on the basic users, allowing up to 250 participants in through the end of September in response to coronavirus. The GoTo series of programs, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, they're different products with different different purposes. The GoToMeeting is the traditional meeting platform where you have the sort of one-on-one engagement, but that does cap out at 250 participants. And there's a further limitation there that I found that video is capped at 25 participants with simultaneous feeds. If you do find yourself in a larger setting where you need to accommodate more than 250 participants, you would have to look at a platform like GoToWebinar. However, unlike GoToMeeting, not all participants can be on camera, or certainly not even 25 participants. And so one of the challenges there is that GoToWebinar will present you with the need to create a stage presence and up to 6 video feeds at one time. WebEx is one that I've used quite a number of times and over a number of years, probably more so than any of the others here. The traditional WebEx meeting platform starts out with allowing up to 50 participants, although that recently has also been expanded to up to 100. But WebEx meetings do cap out at 200 participants. There's also some limitations there that we found in terms of live feeds and being able to live stream our meetings out. And I'll talk about why live stream is important in a moment. Zoom is really the current headline maker that we're hearing the most of for good and bad reasons alike. It seems that everybody's using it. I can say even this weekend it was used for a little family get together. We find that its easy to use interface is very attractive to almost anybody. The host controls make it easy to implement. And although it has some recent security concerns, you've probably heard about Zoom bombing, there have been a lot of movements and strides to correct and address those issues. But like any tool, you have to know how to use it. And it can accommodate one of the largest number of concurrent video streams, starting at 100 with upgrades that allow up to 500 or 1,000 participants. I'll say that in our experience, we found that the larger interactive and public meetings, you'll likely do better using Zoom. You'll need to remain focused on controlling the meeting to ensure that you're not letting the meeting control or get the best of you. That includes limiting chatting, screen sharing, muting, and file sharing. As for implementation considerations, I want you to remember a couple of things here. One is that you need to be both a producer and a director. You're more than just a meeting facilitator when you're moving your meetings into an online and virtual environment. Your ability to conduct a great meeting comes with skill and practice. So use every remote and virtual meeting as a way to practice that new skill. Offer to host meetings when you have a chance. You'll quickly get the hang of producing great virtual meetings. Keeping it accessible and user-friendly is a must. In fact, for us, it was the most important and most critical consideration. In our implementation, we chose to use a combination of Zoom and YouTube because it met our criteria for accessibility, ease of use, scale, and affordability, with affordability being the last consideration. The last piece is maintaining control and security. I set aside a couple of points here that I want to leave with you about that because that can be one of the things that will tank a virtual meeting implementation. Some of the things that we require people to do is a register to attend the meeting. We limit our Zoom meetings to board members, staff, applicants, and anybody from the public registered to provide comments. For any others who just simply want to observe, they have the opportunity to watch our live feed on YouTube. We also turn up the chat or comment features in the meeting and limit the sidebar chat or inappropriate comments, although we'd still use that to connect with the public who are having some technical difficulties. Last piece is making sure that you keep control of the mute function. Requiring board members to be on camera with their microphones on is a must in our community, but we do keep the public muted until it's time for them to speak. So if you're interested in learning more about taking your meetings online, I will be doing some webinars about that, and you're welcome to register online at www.smstrategies.com. Back to you, Bethany.
Thank you, Sean. That was great. Next, we'll hear from Allison Larson, CFD, and founder and empowerment superhero with Tadzo LLC. Allison is going to build off Sean's presentation and utilize her extensive work and engagement as she shares a simple, subtle, and yet powerful design to bring everyone off the sidelines for meaningful interaction and more productive meetings. Allison, whenever you're ready.
I am ready. And there we go. I'm looking for my slides though. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just waiting for control here. And I think Sean did a great job of really teeing up, you know, the place to start about thinking about your meetings. You know, I think we've all had really bad in-person meetings. And I can tell you that if you try to convert a bad meeting or just a mediocre in-person meeting, it's going to be a horrible virtual meeting. So starting with the jumping off point of all those considerations that Sean brought forward, I want to help you move from, you know, you may have heard the term Zoom zombies or other things where you've experienced just these horrible virtual meetings because people are really trying to engage. And I would say that the first place to start is if you don't need to have the meeting and you can communicate in other ways without forcing a meeting, then don't hold the meeting. Really think about the purpose. And in this case, I want to look at ways if our purpose is truly to engage and collaborate and work with folks for more productive, creative, and inspiring things that we need to work on. I'd like to go over with you a tool that is not so tech, but sort of tech. I need some help. There we go. Let me go back one, my dears. There we go. And this is, sorry, you're getting a sneak preview there. Thank you for your help. But what I would propose is that this requires a different approach than conventional meetings. You know, today we're using a webinar where we're converting a presentation straightforward here. in what I'm talking about are, moving away from conventional approaches to something called liberating structures, which were developed by Keith McCandless and Henry Lipomanowitz, which are simple, subtle, and powerful, based on 33 structures and even more in development. And if you can see, it's not having a meeting where you know what the results will be. You're really trying to novelly create. And that's because this is based in complexity science. And I can't think of a more complex time than I've lived through in my lifetime or worked through. And so this is very relevant in the way we may engage online and in many other ways as we are social distancing, even though they work in person. Because if you think about complexity science, the first one right there, we're more than adapting, we're simultaneously shaping something as we're being shaped by the things around us. I know people I'm working with today that are talking about we're walking on the bridge that we're building as we go through this novel situation, but also being holistic, where we're looking at the whole as well as the micro, so we can navigate paradoxes that we're running into. Or non-linear. A lot of economic development groups have very linear strategy as an example. And in the space that we're in, we may all individually need to make simultaneous changes and deviations so that we could collectively address the challenges that we're running into. That's often referred to as anti-fragility, where a lot of activities help us build this sense of working through unknown, complex environments, regardless of the disorder that's around us. I know that sounds very theoretical, but my point is that this works. I'm going to show you the simple, subtle piece to it in very complex environments, and that's what we're working in today. It's because we're able to focus on the DNA of liberating structures called microstructures. These are small elements that keep people engaged in a way that is productive. Sometimes they're so small and so simple, people overlook them. And the paradox of being liberating are the restraint of these structures. So let me highlight these real quickly. The first is to make an invitation. This is simply giving instruction to invite participation. I use the word invite very intentionally because it's not a force thing. It is really trying to bring people into the engagement without over controlling. It's also about distributing participation. The cool thing, and probably the thing I like the most about liberating structures, it's not traditional facilitation. This is really where everyone's involved, and the facilitator is a minor part of helping the group accomplish what they need to. Then you look at configuring groups, and this can be how the groups are configured and even reconfigured as we rapid cycle through complexity. The fourth is how the space is arranged. So in person, you might say, what does the room look like? Where are people, how are the chairs and tables and everything set up? In the virtual space, we have to really think strategically and work planfully. And Sean alluded to a lot of those or commented on those earlier, but which tools are you going to use? What tools will enable you to accomplish what you want to accomplish, both as perhaps a video platform or even supplemental things like Google Docs and Mural. And finally, the sequence of steps and allocation of time is really about what, you have an invitation within a very specific time, but by rapid cycling, we're really able to keep focused. For all I know, you could be reading your email and multitasking, and this kind of work is true engagement where folks are really at the forefront, contributing and using their time wisely. So this is a one-dimensional webinar. I'm talking at you, if you will, and I'm trying to move to the next slide unsuccessfully. There we go. So I'd like to share with you, and I know you're going to be able to see these slides going forward, kind of a good place to start. And this is kind of the foundational liberating structure called 1, 2, for all. And as you can see through the steps, the idea is to really engage everyone up front with the invitation to self-reflect on a challenge or the question. And I gave you a sample question there, you know, like, how would you like to handle this situation? Or what opportunities do you see to make progress in this challenge? But by taking 1 minute silently, everyone has an opportunity to reflect and be primed for the second round of coordinating and pairing up folks, which in Zoom, in Microsoft Teams, and things like that, you are able to really go into breakout groups, which is phenomenally powerful. In this case, you go into pairs, and I'll give you the riff for virtual meetings. From those pairs, they're sharing what they've written, then going to groups of 4 by putting 2 pairs together. They're able to really develop those ideas, notice similarities, and bubble up what can really stand out. These are short periods of time intentionally so that people are really focused, and often what's top of mind is a good starting point for that conversation. And then people would come back to the all in the group. If you time this out, it really is about a 12-minute cycle. However, in the virtual setting, I would recommend, and this is kind of a riff we've been learning through the adaptation of this work more virtually, which I've been doing for many years, but we really are looking at how can you, instead of going to pairs in step 2, recommend perhaps go to groups of 3, because with technology, someone might be hanging out there by themselves, and then that they lose the rhythm of this cycling. That may make larger groups and require a little bit more time so that each individual can share. I also think a riff in this is an opportunity for your small groups to provide and capture all of those great ideas through supplemental documents during your meeting at the same time. And so that might be a Google document, it could be in the chat, it could be Mural, it could be a variety of online tools. So that's kind of a foundational place to start. I'm going to give you another one. And this structure is kind of the W3, what, so what, now what? I know it seems very simple, but I will tell you, and I continue to observe this in COVID-19, is that people are quickly saying, what's happening in my community, and trying to jump to solutions. This is a structure that really slows down your climb up the ladder of inference. What, so what, now what? What being, what are the observations? I'm doing this tomorrow. I mean, I do this regularly with folks, but like tomorrow I've got a client really trying to jump in and do some things that are strategic actions. And so they're slowing down. And I would challenge you to work with groups around, you know, making a comprehensive, holistic view of all the facts, observations, before you jump to the action. Then take time to work on what are the implications of that whole look. If you did this as a team, you probably will be seeing different things. Then going to the now what. And as you work in groups, you can do breakouts in things like Zoom and other online tools. You could capture this with a supplemental document. You also could collectively work around, if you have a small office team, just really taking the time to slow down. I would even say if you're not using a video with breakout, you could do this simply with a Google shared document and harvest together. I've often also done it with a whiteboard tool called Mural. Those are 2 really quick examples. And those examples, there's more that I've even done on March 24th. We did with Restore Your Economy, stakeholder engagement for economic recovery. There's others that I've shared there. I know IEDC has those. But those are individual structures. And strategy, I don't know about you, but a lot of communities aren't waiting to see how they're pivoting strategy. As I said, liberating structures is based in complexity science. And so this is a way of looking at not just an individual structure, but the incredible creativity and power of liberating structures. You get a lot out of one, but when you start stringing these, then it becomes even more powerful because one structure can help inform another structure. And that's what you're seeing in front of you with this strategy not working. It's really a way to address 6 really powerful questions with a variety of structures that help us see the forest and the trees at the same time. So we're really able to act, reflect, and pivot strategically. And so if you're interested in more of that, the final slide here is coming. Could you go back to that for just a minute, my dear? Thank you. There certainly, if you want, the best way to learn this stuff is to really just jump in and do it. And so there are some upcoming free, these are all free, but an opportunity to learn more just how to use a liberating structure, but also gain something out of that. And I threw in another one on the 28th to kind of help people get their head around some of their thoughts of addressing their strategy as well. So these are all free to really, like I said, I think the beauty of this is really about immersive learning. It's hard to talk about it because when you see it and feel it, you'll see that restraint with structure leads to liberating ideas. And so happy to help. And I just think this is really great what IEDC is doing to provide such great value through these tools.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. Those were some really creative ways to think about what's now become routine virtual engagement. So that's awesome. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Laith Wardy. He's a certified economic developer and is the president of Executive Pulse, Inc. He's going to introduce his new COVID-19 client assessment tool and briefly touch on how participants can and should adapt their existing BRE programs as a response mechanism to this pandemic. So, Laith, it's on you.
Thanks, Bethany. How are you doing?
Oh, as well as can be expected.
I get it. I understand. I'm going to really talk about 2 things that may seem a little unrelated, but they are related. Certainly, we're going to be talking about technology tools for about 10 minutes today. But I also want to just talk about really the essence of BRE and how that intersects with what we are dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. And I just want to mention, I do a lot of training work for IEDC and OUEDI, and typically when I'm doing BRE training, I ask people, I say, what are you reading? How are you making sense of the world? Where are you getting your information? And I think what's happened in our industry over the past month in economic development, and when I say that, I mean economic, workforce, community development, all of us essentially in the same church. What's happened to us over the last 30 days is we are now not only responsible to understand the general economic ramifications for what we are doing, what the private sector is doing every day, but in a large context, we really have to understand the health ramifications. We have to generally, if we want to make sense of what's going on, and if we want to be a good steward to the private sector, we really need to understand from a health standpoint what the ramifications are with COVID. And one of the things that just strikes me as just, I guess, really sobering before I jump in here is, we have a $2 trillion stimulus package. And if you look at post 9/11, post the last recession or early in the Obama administration, we had stimulus packages in both of those instances. And the goal was, let's get people to Best Buy. Let's have them buy a refrigerator or a new Xbox, or let's get them into the car dealerships because we really want to gin up the economy, because we all know that really about 75% of what makes our economy spin is consumer spending. And what we want to try to do is really induce people to spend more money. The money that's being spent now at unprecedented levels, and it's going to be more than one stimulus package, I think we would all agree. But you look at the money that's being spent right now, and you can say to yourself that all we're doing is paddling in place. All we're doing is allowing people to try to keep their heads above water. This is not going to provide us with any sort of economic spin. At best, it's going to allow us to stay where we are. So I'm wearing two hats today. I'm going to talk about tech, but I'm going to talk about BR&E, and I'm just going to say that as it relates to those of you that are doing existing industries work, if you're not doing existing industries work, I think this is a wake-up call for you to think about doing it and really baking it into your day in and day out work plan. And for those of you that are doing it, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the presentation, it's really time to adapt what we're doing and look at it in a different light. So I just want to talk generally. About a month ago, when this really started hitting the fan, a lot of our clients, and my company does CRM solutions for clients across the US and Canada, but a lot of our clients were saying, look, how do we make sense of COVID? We're not going to have the luxury of going out and knocking on doors and doing face-to-face visits with businesses. We're not going to probably be able to do industry partnership meetings or even business walks, but how do we make sense of what's going on with businesses and really to understand their trials and tribulations in the face of this unprecedented pandemic? We got together with some folks in the US and Canada that we felt were very good with disasters, and we put together a diagnostic tool. And I just want to mention, this tool is available to any of you if you want to use the tool. A number of our clients have been using the tool now going on 3 weeks. They've been, in many cases, they've been calling people or emailing people and really trying to get a sense of where these business leaders are today and where they see things going in the future. This business diagnostic tool is available to all of you. It can either be a static PDF and you can modify it any way you want, or we can provide it to you as a fillable PDF. We really don't care how you want to use this, how you want to modify this. This is available to you. We feel again, now more than ever, it's important for you to really get your arms around the business community. And I just want to mention editorially, just briefly, in everybody's DNA that's on the phone today and on the webinar today, we are inherently problem solvers. But, in our economic development lives, we've had a very manageable way of solving client problems. It hasn't been 75, 85, 90% of the businesses in our backyard are all facing the same unprecedented challenges. So this really gives us, from an economic development standpoint, this really gives us a very difficult road to hoe, but we still, as problem solvers, want to try to understand what's going on with the business community. And I just want to give you an idea of what our clients, and I grabbed this a couple of weeks ago. This is a British Columbia community, and they've taken the data and they're able to generate reports, and you'll be able to do this same sort of thing where you really get kind of an affinity of how government officials are doing with this. And in this case, we're looking through the lens of federal government, but this tool that we've developed really keys in on not only federal, but provincial, state, and local efforts for COVID, as well as optimism, as well as business impacts like employment. And I'm just going to show you, this gives you an idea of a revenue reduction. And you can see, and this sample size isn't huge. I grabbed this, like I said, a few weeks ago, but the idea here is you can see that the impacts here to the majority of business, over 50% of their revenues, they're losing over 50% of their revenues. And then you can just get the idea here, what about a reduction in workforce? And again, you can see the impacts are fairly significant. The idea here, again, is you don't have to be using our CRM tool. We're happy to give you this intake form. You can apply it any way that you want. We do not expect you to circle back and give us your responses. We don't need to see that information. If you're interested, I'll give you my contact information at the end of this session. But again, the idea here is this is a time, this is the kind of the epiphany moment for all of you. If you're not doing existing industries, if you're not working with the businesses in your backyard, this is certainly a clarion call for you to be doing those things. So let me just show you another tool. Now, this is not a free tool, but I do want to mention this tool because I think it's applicable. We have been doing these online business resource directories for a couple of years now, where we essentially allow economic developers, community developers, workforce developers to map their resources into what would be considered a quote unquote light CRM. This gives those folks the ability to say, I want to make sense of who provides workforce, maybe incumbent workforce, who's doing talent attraction in the market area. Hey, what about arts and culture? What entities are involved in arts and culture? Who provides transportation in our community, et cetera. This gives you the ability to plug in the depth and breadth of all resources that you have under your umbrella. And this is going to be, in my mind, a really good tool for you to think about. And again, you don't have to use what we're doing, but I would just suggest that as you are dialoguing with businesses now, not to supplant your one-on-one with those businesses and the intimate, and I'm sure all of you empathetic way that you're looking at these businesses. But above and beyond that, you really need, in many cases, to be able to give them collateral materials. And that's what this gives you the ability to do. It gives you the ability to give them very specific kind of resource guides or leave behinds based on anything that you've discussed with them. So if somebody says, you know what, I really need to know about this PPP program and what other types of machinery and equipment financing might be available to me through the state or regional or a local revolving loan fund. If you have this type of guide, you can conjure up those results for them and literally email them or print this off and drop it off in their mailbox in a matter of a couple of minutes. That's what this tool is designed to do. I want to mention that we are working with a BBA with Dean Barber's group, and there's an asset mapping that he's willing to help you to do to a SWOT analysis, a light SWOT analysis as part of this, if any of you are interested. So I wanted to show you that. And this just gives you, this is an Ohio client, and you can see I've just grabbed here transportation, logistics, and supply chain. And you can see it's very easy for me, again, to make sense of who's doing what in the community. And the consumer of this is the private sector job and investment person. This is the person, you know, the businesses that you're working with, they're the people that would be the ultimate consumer of this, where you can say, hey, I want to give you this leave behind or this collateral material. I mentioned that I'm going to start and end with BRE, and that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm just going to suggest to all of you that the world has, we all know this, the world has changed dramatically over the last 30 days. We are all part of that change. Nobody knows where this is going to go. But I would just say to all of you again, this, for those of you that are doing BRE, this is going to give you some impetus to say, how are we going to do things differently? You know what? We maybe never thought about healthcare or hospitals as a critical partner, as a stakeholder in economic development, somebody that we need to have at the table all the time, but they are. So this gives us an opportunity in that respect to think about how we're going to broaden our stakeholder networks out. I'm just going to leave you with this: plan for and expect the worst always. That is, you know, anybody that's doing BRE today effectively will tell you that disaster mitigation, disaster recovery, disaster preparedness are baked into their program. You need to think about what's happening right now and say, are we prepared? We're never going to be fully prepared, but are we trying to be prepared for what's going on now? BRE today is more essential than it's ever been. Our economy, again, everything is up in the air. It's going to be a very long time before entrepreneurs are able to go to the bank and get money. Most businesses are not going to be in an investment or recruitment posture for a long time now. So we need to focus on who's in our backyard. We have to find unique ways to communicate with decision makers. When we are not able to go face to face, when we're not able to use industry partnership, focus group, business walk type of mass communication or mass intake, we've got to find other ways to communicate, going back to things like phone, going to email communication, et cetera. We're going to go beyond traditional assistance tools, and I mentioned again, getting people like the hospitals involved. Think outside of the box in terms of your resources, and don't wait. This should be, for most of you, the time when you're going to embrace BRNE. I am not going to be doing a follow-up webinar. I am going to leave you with this information. If any of you are interested or want more information about anything that I've talked about, we're more than happy. Wherever we can give you anything at no cost, we're certainly going to try to do that. And if we can point you in the right direction, we're also more than happy to do that. I hope everybody maintains a healthy and safe balance of this year. Thanks, Bethany.
Thank you, Laith. That was some really awesome information. And we do have some questions rolling in. I'm going to wait until all the presenters have finished to start asking those, but definitely some questions for you, so please stick around. Next, we're going to hear from Calandra Cruikshank, President and CEO of Statebook International. She's actually going to demo the free Viral Insights platform and illustrate how EDOs can use it to create data-driven crisis management plans, understanding where to allocate medical resources, and develop recovery and resiliency plans as we return to economic health. Calandra?
Hi, Bethany. Thanks so much. Little transition, but we're good. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this webinar. And I am Calandra Cruikshank. I am founder and CEO of Statebook International. And for anyone who doesn't know Statebook, our mission is to provide deep data analytics solutions with a future forward vision based on the foundations of inclusion, sustainability, resilience, and innovation. And in the face of coronavirus, we have had a number of our EDO partners. We work with over 500 EDOs across the country currently, and we have had a number of our EDO partners come to us asking for data, and we were getting so many requests that we thought we would partner with one of our technology partners, Navigator CRE, to provide our data in these innovative dashboards powered by Navigator CRE so that we can provide a lot of the data for free to any economic development organizations or anyone else that wants to use this information. So the website is viralinsights.ai, and anybody can come in here and access this information for any city, county, or state across the US. So we are reporting, like everyone else, all of the COVID cases, new cases daily, and total deaths. And those numbers are updated every day. And we have some visualizations around those stats here that you can take a look at. We also have the number of high-risk states ranked in terms of total cases and deaths. And then we have added some really unique perspectives on the data for showing companies and communities some of the risk factors for each state, and again, city and county. So you can see here the percent of the population over 65 who are likely to suffer higher mortality rates due to COVID-19. The population at job risk. For this free version, we included all of the leisure and hospitality employees that would be most likely to have job risk, at least at the time, because when we first developed this platform, the whole country wasn't in stay-at-home mandates yet, and now the majority of us are. But this is one of the industries that is most at risk. And then we have the health professional shortage area. So for each community that has a federally designated health professional shortage area during normal times, we've listed the number of physicians that are needed and the population that experiences the shortage. And then we've included all of the specialists that can intubate the ventilators for each of the different people that need to have a ventilator in order to survive. We've also included some information here on the percent of the population in each state that takes public transportation to work and the percentage that works from home. And then you'll see these arrows here at the bottom of the page. That's to allow you to navigate into additional views of the data. So in this view, when my Wi-Fi catches up, let's see, here we go, it's loading. Sorry about that. I am actually self-quarantined in the Catskill Mountains, so the Wi-Fi is a little slow. But here you can see we have all of the behavioral risk factors by city. So things that put people at higher risk: cancer, asthma, diabetes, kidney failure, as well as the different age brackets for each city. So you can filter to these if you want to pick any state. So let's just pick Colorado as an example. And then you can filter by risk factor. So if you just wanted to see cancer, for example, you can see all of the different cities and the level, the percent of the population who has cancer, as well as specifically for age brackets. And then you can filter by any of the different individual cities as well. So if you wanted to see, for example, Boulder specifically, you can drill down there. And then if we switch to the next view, you can see again those health professional shortage areas and the healthcare specialties. So here we're doing a more granular view of the healthcare specialists: anesthesiologists, emergency medicine, infectious disease, people who can, again, intubate the ventilators, and then the percent of the population that is underserved and the number of medical practitioners required to bring that up to par. I'm going to skip through a couple of these dashboards that are visualizing some similar data in different ways, but you can feel free to dig into that as you wish to, because again, this is viralinsights.ai and it's all free. Here we have the total number of people in leisure and entertainment industry, and for a lot of EDOs, we're doing specific views of this, adding obviously for an additional fee, but we're adding whatever industries or occupations or payroll rates that are applicable to their community, and then mapping out all kinds of unique views of this information for them to be able to track and monitor things as they respond to the virus, recover from the virus, and then reinvent their communities afterwards. So we can customize all of these views for data that is most applicable to your community. So that is the information that we're including in Viral Insights. We do have some additional dashboards. I won't go through all of them, but you can see that there are other views of the dashboards, and then we also have important information about unemployment claims and how many people are at risk of losing their jobs. The other product I want to show you very quickly that we've developed also for free is this, we call it Mobility Monitor. It's mobilitymonitor.us. And this is a fully interactive map that shows the percentage of people from week to week or day to day that are still moving around the US or have stopped going anywhere and are sheltering in place. So this view you can see here is on the move. And this is people that from the last week in February to the last week of March, the difference of the number of people that are still moving around. So you can see in some of these places they have shelter in place mandates, and the blues are representing up to 20% less people moving around from the end of February to the end of March, and the reds are showing up to 35% more moving around. And you can change these views to the number of people who are sheltering in place, which you can see are mostly reds. And so those are more people sheltering in place from 1 month to the next. And there are different views, how many people are going to work, how many people are out shopping or doing other sort of short trips, etc. So I just wanted to bring these toolkits to your attention because they are very important for having insightful tools with actionable insights that can inform first responders, law enforcement, government agencies, businesses, and citizens. And again, as communities respond, recover, and then seek to reinvent from the COVID-19 pandemic, they are incredibly useful tools that can help your community now and then again into the future as people start returning to work, taking advantage of the entertainment and like dining and shopping again, expansions for data centers or entire supply chains, including manufacturing and warehousing, starting to come back online and needing data and information to be able to move forward. So thank you so much, Bethany, and thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you, Calandra. Those are really robust tools. And once again, like you mentioned, they're available at no cost to the practitioners. So great to see that information. Next up, we have Mr. Ron Bertossi, Chief Executive Officer of GIS WebTech. Ron is going to provide information on free GIS tools designed to help economic developers, public officials, and businesses make informed decisions around COVID-19. Ron?
Thanks, Bethany. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So, Bethany, if you would tee up the slides.
You should have, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. Great. Today, let's start with a quick introduction to GIS WebTech. We are the economic development industry's GIS experts, a GIS technology company focused exclusively on the economic development sector. We're the fastest growing provider of technology for economic development, having more than doubled in size every year for the last 4 years. We provide a suite of technology products and services with our entire suite built natively on the Esri platform. So we're an Esri certified partner and the only Esri partner focused on economic development. Lastly, we serve economic development organizations of all sizes, rural EDOs to large states and everything in between. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Oh, I gotta remember to move the slides. Okay, today we're going to give you a brief overview of some very useful GIS tools that are available for economic development organizations at no charge. Everything we cover today is available for free. And these are being provided pro bono by us and our partners in order to help during this public health and economic crisis. The first thing to note is that you do not need to worry about scribbling down URLs or taking screenshots of this presentation to get copies of the links to these tools. We're maintaining them on our website, updating them continuously, so that you can use our website as a simple clearinghouse or a central repository. All you need to remember is giswebtech.com. You can go there at any time to find links to these tools that we'll highlight today. So today we're going to show you 5 tools. Now keep in mind that this is just a sample of the broader set of tools available. It reflects tools we think are the most useful for you, but there are many more available through the website. Okay, so as I mentioned, our website can act as your central clearinghouse for these GIS tools. So let's take a look at our landing page. You note immediately that there are 2 active links relevant to COVID-19. The first in green is the link to request the first of our free GIS tools, our COVID-19 Impact Planning Report. The second, in the white banner, links you directly to the web page we set up for accessing the free GIS resources of our partners. So in summary, you can simply go to giswebtech.com, click on the green button to get your free COVID-19 Impact Planning Report, or click on the white banner to access the other free resources. Let's take a look at the first of the 5 free resources. This is GIS WebTech's COVID-19 Impact Planning Report. The example you see on your screen is one we produced pro bono for the city of Atlanta. This is a 2-page report, entirely in infographic form. We provide it to you in PDF and image file formats, but also in HTML form so you can include it on your website. There are no limits or restrictions on its use, so please feel free to share it as you see fit. It's meant to support you and your community. It's important to note that the report does not include diagnosis or case statistics. Instead, it's meant to provide key healthcare and related demographic data to assist in informed decision-making. So it includes information about healthcare coverage, populations at risk, and related data. Again, you can sign up for a free report on our website. We provided hundreds of these reports to communities across the country, and many of the EDOs we've sent them to have found them helpful in communicating with local officials, local businesses, and many have posted these on their websites as well. So please feel free to do so. Okay, the second free resource is Esri's COVID-19 GIS Hub. This is a remarkable single source location for all things related to COVID on the Esri platform. There are a couple things to note on this. First, you don't need to have an Esri license to access this hub, nor do you need to be a GIS expert. Many of the data sets and the apps in here are simple and easy to use and designed for non-GIS experts. Second, you'll note the link at the bottom of the middle of the page. That links to an index of apps that Esri is maintaining. This is a very handy and well-organized way to find useful apps, and they're being curated by Esri's disaster response program. Lastly, please keep in mind that this is all being updated in real time by Esri and by its partners as this crisis unfolds. So new data and new apps are being added every day. So you'll want to check this regularly. One more thing on Esri's COVID-19 GIS Hub. It contains a link to the familiar Johns Hopkins dashboard that has become the go-to source for real-time data on COVID cases. For example, if you read online news, which we all do today, it's a pretty good chance you've seen a similar screenshot to what you see here in the news articles that you read. So that dashboard, like nearly all of the heavily used GIS resources for COVID, was built on the Esri platform. Our third example is Esri's disaster response program. This site is mostly geared toward public health, but it contains the ArcGIS Hub Coronavirus Response Template, which is a very useful and simple tool for non-GIS experts to build a coronavirus response package for your community. The template allows you to select the data for your community and produce a useful communications tool with nothing more than clicks and dragging and dropping. So it's a true template. And this site also offers a complimentary 6-month license for ArcGIS Online. The free subscription is a great chance to check out the incredible functionality and data available through the world's most powerful GIS platform, which is Esri. ArcGIS Hub Basic and ArcGIS Insights are 2 additional tools that are included in the complimentary license. We won't discuss those today, but they're very useful tools for doing GIS work as well. Okay, our fourth example is the ArcGIS Coronavirus Business Continuity Solution. This is a collection of maps and applications, all packaged together and all designed to support documentation and reporting on business operations. A good example is the screenshot you see in front of you. It highlights the locations and work status of personnel for a hypothetical company and allows the managers of that company to see in real time the status of the workforce and to share that data with you and with local officials for reporting and planning purposes. A second example is the template that is included to allow you to report this data on your website. Imagine how powerful it'd be, for example, to show on your website in real time data like this for your local businesses, documenting how they and their teams are adapting to the current situation. Quick note in addition on the ArcGIS Coronavirus Business Continuity Solution. Again, you don't need to be an expert in GIS to do this. The instructions are simple, they're clear, they assume no GIS expertise. What you see on your screen here is just a snip of the initial part of the instructions. Very well organized, very simple and easy to use. Okay, our last example is Esri's public policy maps. These are maps that are available for free. They're listed in Esri's public policy section, but the data they provide are useful for you and your organizations as well. Users can start at the national level and then quickly and easily move to the local level, seeing data right down to the individual county. There are 11 maps in total, covering data like you see listed here, all relevant for the current crisis. Things like where are the areas with high daytime populations, more travelers, more seniors, where are those age 65 and over who are working, where are the uninsured located, what areas in the country are under any kind of US travel restrictions, etc. Okay, so a couple key takeaways I'd like you to leave this discussion with. First is there's a wealth of GIS data and tools available to help you support your communities and businesses at no cost during this crisis. Most require little or no GIS expertise. Anyone can use them. Our website is functioning as a one-stop link, so you can simply come to our site and have access to all of these tools. They're all on the Esri platform. Therefore, you're getting consistent data through use of all of the tools. And then we're going to hold a follow-on webinar to go through these resources in more detail on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can sign up at our website, and that webinar will include much more detail on how you could actually use these tools. We'll walk you through some specific examples. Thanks, Bethany, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Ron. That was really good stuff. Okay, so last but not least, we have Mr. Chris Briggs, Senior Vice President and GM of Public Sector Solutions for Buxton. He's going to showcase how Buxton has built a tool to help track and communicate how your business community is impacted by COVID-19 in real time using consumer data. Chris, it's on you.
Yes, Bethany, thank you very much. Go ahead and pass over control. All right, thank you very much. So I am, as stated, with the Buxton Company, and very quick 15-second primer on who we are. We are a consumer analytics company. We're located in Fort Worth, Texas, but work across the nation and actually across the world, providing consumer analytics insights to businesses. So on the private sector side, retailers, restaurants, grocers, in the healthcare industry. Extensive line of work we do there in patient and population analytics. And then the work that we've been doing for roughly 16 years in the public sector, where our audience is primarily economic developers and economic development organizations, but also city managers and increasingly finance directors within municipalities as well. What I'm going to go over today is some information that we put together, and for context, it was about a month ago today that we closed our offices and began working from home. And that very first week, that weekend, our teams came together to build a tool that I'm going to show today to be able to help our clientele understand what is happening in individual markets. And I think you will find it interesting. So let's orient ourselves with a sense of what the data is. First, speaking to granularity. So we're able to report, and you see a lot of reports about things that are happening state by state, city by city, region by region. So we're able to, what I'm going to show you in a moment, report nationally at the state level, within a region, within an individual market, within a county, within an individual city, or even drill down to a zip code. And what we are doing is we are looking at consumer activity inside of businesses. And I'm going to tell you why that's important here in a moment. But as we do that, there's the term, for those not familiar, geofencing. What we have done is geofenced over 4.5 million business locations, all types of businesses across the United States. In the lower left-hand corner, you see that red polygon on that aerial image. That is a visualization of what a geofence is. So that is geofencing an individual restaurant. And then the name of the game here is we're able to harvest, if you will, the individual pings which happen inside of a geofence, and understand who those people are as consumers, where they're coming from, and then more importantly, their volumes of visitation. So on a daily basis, we are tracking 4 to 6 million GPS-enabled devices, so think smartphone, that we are able to, in a de-identified way to protect consumer privacy, tie back to household level, and able to also deduplicate in terms of the pings, so multiple pings coming from the same device. We want to isolate and build not a census of information, but a representative sample of actual humans that we can understand as consumers. So that gives you a sense of the data that we're looking at, the scale that it can be used at, let's talk about why this is important. First of all, when we look at these samples of data within these geofences, on the side of our business that works with individual retailers, restaurants, grocers, the name of the game for us is we're working with consumer data. A lot of times their transaction information, we're appending it to our household level information that we update every 4 weeks. We're pulling forward consumer insights. We're doing all that big data type analysis. A couple of years ago, when mobile data started coming onto the market, we took our time, we worked and analyzed just about every provider on the landscape, testing in our product teams to see what was the right type of data, if any, that we would use. The type of information we are bringing in on a daily basis with regard to this GPS data allows us to triangulate, to identify workforce locations, to identify home locations, and really use it in a unique way that when we look at overall volume that we're able to harvest and sample, it correlates very highly with individual location performance. So if you think in terms of a consumer-facing, serving bricks and mortar type of business, this volume that is able to be harvested correlates highly with their individual sales. So understanding that this correlates with sales, what this helps you understand are revenue impacts. So when you think of a tax standpoint, the taxable transactions that happen within your community that drive revenue for many states across the United States, this helps you understand where you are and also helps you understand where things are heading. From a budgeting standpoint, many municipalities are going through budgeting right now and will be throughout the year, and certainly making adjustments. This is going to help you understand where those adjustments need to be, and it's going to help put in the context of previous year's performance how severe those adjustments may need to be or may not be, depending on how we start to recover. And then finally, from an economic development standpoint, this is really important. The ability for you to support your businesses, so your local businesses, your mom and pops. This tool that I'm about to walk through complements an entire suite of economic development tools that we have at Buxton that we provide for our clientele. And a big part of that toolbox is helping local businesses understand their customer, understand the strengths and weaknesses of those customers, help them market to those customers, understand their trade areas, etc. And so with this information, you're going to be able to, if you wanted to, on a daily basis, communicate where we are. Have we bottomed out, or are we climbing out in terms of consumer impact? What is the new normal? Understanding the resiliency of specific core customer types critical to those individual businesses so that they can make key operational decisions about when to stock up, when to ramp up, when to hire and to what extent, and when to start marketing again. So let me jump right in. I've got some screen grabs here that I did last week in preparation for today. What we have, though, is a dashboard that's interactive. And next week on Monday, April 20th, we'll be hosting one of those webinars to go into deeper detail on this. But today I'm going to focus on some high levels. What you see in front of you represents a year-to-date snapshot, day by day, of visits into grocery stores within one city. And what you can see is this red line was last year's volume. And then the green line is this year's rolling 7-day average. So we've got rolling 7-day average current year over rolling 7-day average previous year. And as we look through and compare that, we first of all can notice that we have been spending in this community more dollars inside of grocery stores this year than we did last year. And then once we got to about March 13th, when things started getting real serious, NBA shut down, March Madness was shut down, major cancellations were being announced, and then state by state, people started doing shutdowns. You saw a run on grocery stores, which has plateaued a bit, but certainly the volumes are still very high. We're about 119% higher 7-day rolling average than we were in 2019. Moving forward, I've just got a couple of categories I wanted to walk through. I want to walk through general merchandise. Again, green is current year, red is previous year. See that similar bump, not as pronounced as it was just for the strict grocery category, but gives us an understanding of an increased volume of consumer activity. Now let's talk about some of the negatives. So we have restaurants. So restaurants, what's interesting here is we see on the green line current year, restaurants was lagging behind last year's performance. So even if we hadn't had this pandemic, this information would have shown the city that revenues expected, tax revenues expected, and the performance of their local businesses was probably down over the previous year. And so that is going to have an economic impact. And there was already some stress on these restaurants. Now we get to this point where the red dip was, that was spring break, and this was a college town. The green line followed it, but it never came back. And we are down at about 49%, almost 50% of where we normally would be. So we're getting some pickup traffic in our restaurants, but certainly nowhere near, and you know this, nowhere near the volume. The important thing here is not showing that things are bad and business is down, or that there are spikes in grocery stores. You know that anecdotally. What we're going to be showing, and this is updated every day with a 72-hour lag, but every day we start to see where this plots. And when we start to see this rise back up, we're going to understand if we're coming back to the level of where we expected to be and where we enjoyed previous year, or if we've got some new normal that may be lower. And we're going to be able to understand when we start plotting our sales tax receipts and revenues that we get back from the state for many of us, and there's a lag to that information. We're going to be able to balance this against what happened previous year and understand the impacts. We're also going to be able to help our existing businesses know where we are, as I pointed out earlier. Looking here at traveler accommodations, so this is hotels, and you can see again we are way down, 60% decrease. And I will note in this city that we're looking at that they had opened up some of their key hotels to house homeless population, and homeless people do have phones and smartphones and GPS enabled devices as well. So a lot of this traffic is coming from that, but this is important to that community because one, they depend on a lot of visitation from out of market for both business and leisure. That drives a lot of local performance, and they also have hot taxes, hotel occupancy taxes that drive part of their budgets. So as we're looking forward, again, I mentioned on Monday, April 20th, we'll have a webinar, and I have a QR code up there if you want to use your phone's camera to scan that, and we'll take you to the landing page to register for that. I know IEDC will be promoting that as well. And then if you can't wait until next week to learn more, we're standing by ready to give you a walk through what some of your local insights are to help you in the current state, get a sense of what things are and the direction things are moving. If you email us at buxton@buxtonco.com, buxton@buxtonco.com. And importantly, please put IEDC webinar request in your subject line. We will have our team follow up with you and walk you through what we're seeing in your market right now. And then note, we have several people that have been interested in getting 24/7 access to this. There is a modest fee to be assessed for if we set you up with your own dashboard of this information that's updated every day. And we have some packages there. I wish I could give those away free, but there's some costs that we incur on licensing front, the way we're using that data. But we've got some packages that can get you hooked up for 3-month or 12-month options. Again, if you need the 24/7 access, I will say powerful tool, and we'll show this when we go through the webinar, the way to use this information for your local businesses, also the way to help your colleagues, if you're on the municipal side, understand the revenue impacts to city budgets and how to make adjustments to those budgets going forward. And that is all I have for you today. Again, join that webinar with us next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. It's always really powerful information, as you said, to be able to look at consumer spending trends. We're really excited that all of our speakers could join us for this important webinar. We understand that this is a time of new normals, and we wanted to offer a deep dive into the world of virtual and technological tools and platforms because we know people are eager to learn how to use this data to inform their work. One unique thing, as many of the speakers mentioned about today's webinar, is that it's many of these folks who presented today will be providing follow-up demos of their products and tools. Starting tomorrow, you'll have an opportunity to learn more in depth about our speakers' products. Dates and times for these demonstrations will be shared at the end of this presentation, as well as in a follow-up email to all attendees. A recording of this webinar, as well as the presentation slides, will be available on the IEDC COVID-19 webinar page within 24 hours. I'd like to remind the participants who are still on the line that you can type your questions into the questions tab on your GoToWebinars dashboard, and representatives from IEDC will be standing by to answer them. I'm going to ask a few questions now, but know that if you want to enter a question, it's not too late. Let's see here. Okay, so this first question is for Allison. It came from Kelly Andrews, and she wants to know if you can control access if and when you want to go into a closed session.
So this is Allison. Thank you so much for your question. I am most familiar with Zoom, and although it has had some Zoom bombing issues, they have done a very good job. In fact, there's great articles and interviews by the Zoom CEO that I think are great business learning environments, but are examples. So directly answering your question on Zoom, you absolutely can through a variety of ways, including password. And then when you actually do breakouts, you are in full control of that. So, and I would also engage Sean here. I know he's quite adept and apt in many of the tools, including Zoom, but you definitely can control who participates by, from a technological point of view for that, if that was the question. So. And I'd be happy directly one-on-one to show you how to do that if you want to spend some time offline. But.
Yeah, this is Sean here. Just to follow up to Allison's point. Yeah, breakout rooms are a great way to do that, to set up some if you have to go into an executive session or something. And I just remind people just to make sure you know who's in that room before you start engaging in sensitive discussions.
Thanks, guys. Okay, Leif, this is a question for you. You mentioned a bunch of documents and resources that were available to practitioners during your presentation, and some of our guests want to know how they can get a hold of the documents that you talked about.
Yeah, I've already had a bunch of people email me. You can go to executivepulse.com, and we have a staff directory. You can just email me, ask me for whatever you need, and I'm happy to give it to you. I am intentionally not doing a follow-up webinar just because we're in BR&E and the tech side. We're just jammed these days, but just send me what you need, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Awesome, thank you. Ron, this question is for you. One of our listeners from Canada would like to know if the GIS WebTech COVID-19 Impact Planning Report is only for the US, or can Canadian communities take advantage of it also?
Great question. We've gotten requests from Canada, and unfortunately we are not able to provide the data for Canadian communities. Our license covers only the US at this point. However, if you check with Esri Canada, there's a pretty good chance they have something similar available for Canadian communities. I don't know that for a fact, but there's a pretty good chance they would.
Okay, thank you. And I think this question is open. Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone want to say something else?
Sorry, this is Kalandra, and I just wanted to let you, whoever asked that question know that we do have the mobility data somewhat similar to what Esri is showing there with for Canadian communities as well. So Mobility Monitor may be able to help there.
Thank you. Okay, and I think this is the last question that's come in, and it's for the whole group. So this attendee would like to know if anyone has any recommendations for internet. Are there any recommended sources for internet availability and quality by area, as many work from home and children attend school using remote means? We all know what it's like to get kicked out of a Zoom meeting 5 times within an hour. So any good insights there to share?
I could help with that. This is a real issue because there is publicly available broadband data from the FCC, but there are 2 issues with it. One, it's generally outdated. They come out with it once a year. And second, it is not accurate down to the street level. Unfortunately, if you want to get very accurate and very precise broadband data, you're going to have to license it. It's available through a number of suppliers, but you're not going to be able to get it for free through government sources.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Sean here. In New York, we do have some broadband availability maps that the state does publish. If you search for, if you're in New York and you're looking in that area, if you just search up New York broadband map, you should be able to find that really easily.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sean. There. So what's happened is because of this difficulty with data at the federal level, some of the states have started initiatives like New York. Georgia has a similar initiative where they're producing maps at the state level that are much more detailed and much more accurate. Georgia's comes out, I think, in June. I guess New York's is already ready.
Okay, well, on that note, I'd like to thank all of our speakers this afternoon, Sean, Allison, Laith, Kalandra, Ron, and Chris. This has helped us understand how to track live data of community responses to the COVID-19 crisis and shown some simple ways to engage teams in this teleworking world we've stepped into. As a reminder, many of our panelists will be doing follow-up demonstrations to explain these products and tools. Please consider joining in these sessions. They are all free and many of the tools are free. A follow-up email will be sent to attendees on how to access the demonstration, quote-unquote, meeting rooms online. IEDC's next webinar is this Thursday, April 16th, on understanding philanthropic resources and economic development. We will unravel and discuss types of foundation resources, including funding, and how communities have used these funds to launch projects or improve existing projects. I highly encourage you to attend this webinar to gain an understanding of how economic developers can put their name in front of these foundations who are critical partners for community and economic development. Please continue to visit IEDC's website, restoreyoureconomy.org, to find resources, tools, best practices, and the latest updates on how economic developers and their communities are addressing the COVID-19 crisis. Be well and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.